This video presents a series of progressions that are going to build you that fundamentally sound forehand we talked about in the previous video. Now, the progressions can be thought of as a series of drills. And what we do is we start you off at contact, and then from contact, we're going to put another drill, another piece on top of that. It's going to be easy to follow. And then on top of that, there's another easy to follow one, and then another. And at the end of these progressions, then you're going to have that fundamentally sound forehand. It's going to be a relatively sophisticated shot, but it's not going to be wildly complex. And that's what we want, because we want that basic, classic forehand. And then on top of that, later in the system, that's where we're going to add those more sophisticated pieces, the windshield wiper forehand, etc. That's going to give you a high level and a modern forehand. And you may be wondering, well, I have a pretty good forehand, so should I follow these progressions? And the answer is yes. You really need to make sure, if you're going to progress through the FYB system, that you can hit the forehand we are teaching. And I sometimes, when I'm working on my forehand, I really simplify it and just focus on a particular piece, do one of these progressions, and you're going to find, if you try this, it's really amazing how much progress you can make by, again, simplifying the motion, focusing on an exclusive step, and really going back to the basics. I also want to note that as we work ourselves through these progressions, I'm going to tie everything we're doing now back to the fundamentals, back to the previous video, so y'all can see how the progressions are building you each fundamental of the forehand, those 5 fundamentals that we worked on, that we talked about in that previous video. So let's start with the first progression, and you can see I'm at contact right now. So this is where I would end up at the end of the third fundamental. I'd be at contact, and to recap, the racket would be out in front of my body a little bit, about waist high, and the strings would be flat on the back of the tennis ball. And this progression is critical because getting to contact, that's the whole name of the game. Everything you're doing leading up to contact is to get yourself to the correct body position, correct racket and body position at contact. So it's really important to understand what that looks like and what it feels like, and that's why we're starting you right here. Let's also make note of my hitting arm position. Got a slight bend at the elbow. And again, you can note the racket position. And I'm going to keep that. What's going to happen first is I'm going to shadow my follow through. So we're working on progressing from the end of the third fundamental into the fourth fundamental, the follow through. And I'm just catching it with my non-hitting hand. But you can see that I'm keeping my arm position pretty stable. So I'm maintaining the hitting arm position into my follow through. And again, that's real important. The hitting arm position should not break down as soon as you make contact. You have it before contact, add contact, into the follow through. So let's watch the shadowing one more time, and you'll notice I'm just maintaining that entire structure while I work on that fourth fundamental step. Now that I've got the shadowing down, I'm going to hit some tennis balls. And you can see that's what I'm doing here. Same motion, but I'm just pushing the tennis ball from contact. I'm pushing the tennis ball over the net, not trying to hit hard, just swinging from contact, low to high, and then catching the tennis racket with my non-hitting hand. Now, a couple other points I want to make. You'll notice I'm facing the net, and that's what you want. That's the body position you need to be in at contact. But my feet are also parallel to the net, and you'll remember from the fundamentals videos I said you want to be in a neutral stance. And we're about to get to that, so don't worry about it. But I just wanted to mention it in case you were wondering why I was standing like that. So again, the key point to take away from this first progression is understanding what contact looks and feels like. Start right at contact, don't hit hard, push through the ball, follow through, low to high, and catch the tennis racket with your other hand. In the second progression, we're going to put you in that neutral stance we just talked about. And what this progression is going to get you is some of that forward swing, some of the pieces necessary for the third fundamental, swing to contact. So let's watch me shadow this motion. And what I'm going to do is swing to contact by rotating my body back towards the net and transferring my weight from my back foot to my front foot. And you can see my back heel comes up as I do this. Now from this position here, now I'm at contact. Same exact position we had in the previous progression, except that now I'm in the neutral stance. And then from here, I follow through the exact same way low to high, catch the tennis racket with my other hand. Now you'll notice if we go back to the beginning of this progression, my racket is already down. I haven't traced out a C, it's just down here already. And that's fine, we're going to add the C motion later on. But right now we want to work on those other two things, which is the body rotation back towards the net and the weight transfer forward to contact. Having gotten the shadowing down, now I'm going to hit some tennis balls. And again, just like the previous step, not trying to hit hard. I'm being very, very deliberate in my technique here. Taking the previous step and I'm adding the body rotation and the weight transfer into the court, and I'm not putting any pace on the ball. I'm just making sure that all the technical elements are there. And the other thing I want to highlight, this is really, really important. The racket's here, and then when I swing forward, the hitting arm position hasn't changed. So let's watch a couple more of these forehands. Hitting arm position is staying the same, and that's what you really need to focus. This is one of the most important things to focus on at this step of the game, at this progression, is making sure the hitting arm position is stable and consistent as you rotate and swing forward to contact and then into the follow-through. The third progression is going to start us from the completion of our preparation. And you can see that I'm in the completion of my preparation here. And it's important to note that I've neutralized my stance already. Now, this step is going to add that C motion to the forward swing to contact. And at the completion of this progression, you're going to have the third fundamental, those three pieces, the weight transfer, the body rotation, and the C motion. You'll have all of that. You'll have the third fundamental, the swing to contact. So what I'm going to do here is simply drop the tennis racket down, and then I swing forward to contact, and at the same time, my body rotates and my weight transfers into the court, onto my front foot. Now let's go back to the completion of my preparation, and you'll see that my non-hitting arm is extended out across my body. And by focusing on the shoulder turn, that gets this arm out of the way. Now, it's also important to note that my hitting arm structure is staying the same as I drop the racket down and swing forward. And so let's clip to some shots of me just hitting tennis balls from this position. Again, not hitting hard, but I'm keeping that structure the same down and then forward through into the follow-through. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's really important to keep this whole thing very structured and in the same relationship, because that's going to make your forehand really stable. It's going to make your contact feel very solid. At this point in the progressions, we have your swing down from the completion of your preparation. So now what we need to do is focus on the fundamentals necessary to get to the completion of your preparation. The pivot and the shoulder turn and taking your racket back. And we're going to separate those two from the rest of the stuff at this moment. So what happens is I'm in the ready position, and I'm going to pivot with my outside foot, turn my shoulder sideways. You'll notice this is how the racket starts to take back. It's that first fundamental. And then I'm going to take the racket all the way back with my hitting arm and extend my non-hitting arm out across my body. Now if we go back to the ready position, what you're going to notice is that during the preparation, I'm going to neutralize my stance. And that's what we want to do. We want to get everything in place so that we can swing forward correctly later in the shot. And once you have this down, then what you can do is complete your preparation and then hit some tennis balls. But we're going to make it broken, so to speak. You're going to complete your preparation, hold it for a second, make sure you've got it, and then you're going to swing forward and hit the tennis ball. And if you watch some of this feeding, you'll notice that I don't get fed the ball until I complete my preparation. So the feeder waits until I'm set, then I get fed the ball, because you need to make sure that you're completing your preparation properly before you do everything else, because the preparation is what facilitates the swing to contact and the follow-through. The fifth and final progression is to put everything together into one coherent motion and get that fifth fundamental, which is a continuous swing path. So what I'm going to do to start is to shadow the motion, the entire motion from the service line, pivot, turn my shoulders, and you'll notice that once I release the racket with my other hand, my non-hitting hand, the swing path stays continuous. I execute all the steps we talked about in the progressions, and if I'm doing it correctly, I'm executing all 5 fundamentals. Let's watch it again. Pivot, shoulder turn. First fundamental, racket comes back. Second fundamental, swing to contact. Third fundamental, follow through. Fourth fundamental. And again, to reiterate, swing path is consistent, that fifth fundamental. Once I got that down, I can hit some tennis balls, again from the service line, not trying to hit hard, making sure all the pieces are still in place. And if they are, if I can do this ad nauseum, then I move back to the baseline and I can hit a little bit harder, but again, I'm still being very deliberate with my technique, not trying to hit hard, trying to get some topspin on the ball, get some good net clearance, and get the ball deep at the service line. But outside of that, I don't need to do too much. I'm now hitting a fundamentally sound forehand and a good forehand. And I have a forehand now. This forehand is what we're going to use later in the FYB system to turn the shot into a deadly and sophisticated weapon.